Hi everybody, welcome back. Well, our next project needs no introduction. It's a Marantz Model 2285B. These were fantastic receivers. They're very well known, right up there with the 2270. It's just one of those really desirable models. Let's take it apart and let's keep our fingers and toes crossed on this, huh? This has the dual secondary power supply, which is pretty cool. It's almost like having the two separate power supplies for the left and right channel. You've seen this before, like on that 2500, the Marantz 2500 that I did, and some of the other higher end, higher powered receivers. This is the 2285 was rated at 85 watts per channel. The B model, which this one is rated at 94 watts per channel. So there are some subtle differences. The other thing is you have the Dolby module, and that reminds me, one of you asked in the comments about what the Dolby module is. If you look on some of the higher end units, Marantz had this slot that they installed. This was on that last tuner that we worked on, right? Back for a little while, I think in the 1980s and possibly in the 70s. Yeah, 70s and 80s. Dolby Laboratories actually had a, what was it called? An emphasis, pre-emphasis and de-emphasis that they could put onto FM broadcast. And they would broadcast Dolby FM. And the Dolby FM essentially had the same purpose of Dolby on a cassette, and that was to reduce the hiss and increase the high frequency response of the receiver. And what you would do is if you bought that optional module, you could plug it in here. If you tuned in a Dolby encoded FM radio station and you went to the front and you adjusted for the FM 25 microseconds, what that would do is that would put the proper de-emphasis on the receiver for the Dolby encoded station, and it would make the station sound very clear. If you didn't have a Dolby capable receiver, the station would sound kind of dull sounding. It wouldn't sound correct. So that didn't catch on for a long time, and not a lot of stations actually used it. So that kind of fell by the wayside after a while, and eventually it wasn't used. So today, I don't know of any Dolby encoded FM radio stations out there anymore. So even if you had this, it wouldn't do you any good because the stations are not encoded with it. If you know of a station near you that is still Dolby encoded, let me know, because I'm really interested in knowing that. But that's what that is. So this is going to be a straightforward restoration. We're going to go over the whole thing, do the recap as requested, replace the capacitors. These ones we're going to have to restuff. These are special capacitors here. There's actually two sections in here. They're both 6800 microfarad at 63 volts. So the left channel would have this dual capacitor, and the right channel would have this dual capacitor, and each one has its own coil and its own rectifier and so forth. So they're two separate power supplies that share the same iron core of the transformer. And of course we'll clean up the dust and so forth. And I think that's about it. Again, I don't know, and I just knocked those little pieces of plastic all over the floor. I don't know if there's anything wrong with this, if it plays or doesn't play, but we'll find out, and regardless, we'll fix it if something needs repaired. Okay, I have the unit plugged in, and it's on the current limiter. Let me bring it down here so we can see. And the light should light up really bright because this is a pretty big stereo. And then it should stay on somewhat, but it shouldn't stay, it should dim down. I'm only using this small bulb. It's only, I think, a 40 watt or so. So let's see what it does when we turn it on. Excellent. That's just what I would expect. and that's from just all the current draw on it. Now, strangely enough, I don't see any panel lamps whatsoever. Well, they're about all burned out. You can see just a couple of them lighting up. So we have a bunch of light bulbs to replace. And other than that, and of course the relay, the protect relay did not come in because we have too much current limit on there. And what I'm going to do now, I don't have any speakers connected. We're going to check for some DC offset. And I'm going to bring another bulb in. And you heard that click. So that's good. That means the protect relay came in. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get you in frame here, hopefully. I hope you can see that. It's hard to see with the camera here if we're in focus or not, but there we go. I don't know if that makes it any easier. How about that? Okay, so let's go from ground, and we're going to do left channel and right channel. So here's one channel, and we have nothing hardly. And on the other channel, we have about 6 millivolts. So 6 millivolts on one side, and about 2 millivolts roughly, 1 or 2 floating around. Very, very low DC offset. That's good. So we don't have any big problems there. And with the larger current limiting bulb in, you can see they're not even lit up at all, even though this thing's on. About 379 milliamps, and we're at 113 volts right now. So we're not limiting a whole lot. Seeing that it's from 120 volts, we're down to 113. That's not too bad. So I think this receiver is safe to connect to a set of speakers just to see if it works and if we get any sound. So we're going to do that, and we'll be right back. Okay, I am going to cue up some music that is YouTube safe. And I have a song here called If I Had a Chicken. You heard it. If I Had a Chicken by Kevin MacLeod. Or MacLeod. I can't see because my eyes suck. And I'm looking across the room at the screen. Let's do If I Had a Chicken. Well, it's playing, and it sounds pretty good, other than having some really scratchy controls. Of course, we'll have to clean all the controls in this. I think this is just going to be a maintenance thing. I don't think we're going to have a whole lot of troubleshooting. Of course, we haven't tried the tuner, and we haven't tried the phono stage and all that, but this thing looks in pretty decent shape, so we'll see. We'll see how it turns out. Anyway, let's move on and start doing some cleaning, and we'll go through this piece by piece. Well, jumping right in with both feet here, we have a lot to do. And I have the faceplate removed. I have the amplifier module removed. I have the power supply partially removed, and up here. And just working on a few things that we're going to do during our restoration. Here's a printout of a circuit board that I have out being printed right now. And it's going to use 8 capacitors, 4700 microfarad, and they're going to replace these 2 dual capacitor modules up here. And the board is actually going to fit right in place of the old capacitors up here. Again, these probably are okay right now, but the owner wants this thing completely redone. They want all the capacitors replaced, everything kind of future-proofed as much as possible. I have the dial face removed to be able to access these lights. All but one of the lights is burned out on this, including the dial indicator light. So we're going to have to replace that. More about that in a minute. I am going to replace these with LEDs, but we are going to reduce the power so that it's not overly bright. These LEDs tend to be much brighter than the incandescent ones they're replacing. These are warm white. I'm not going to use the bright blue ones because this does have the blue filter in front of it. Here's the old dial face, and you can see the old vellum is very discolored and kind of brown, has little speckles on it. It will just continue to get darker with age and deteriorate. So we're going to remove that, and it's going to be replaced with this plastic vellum. I just have to punch the holes yet. This stuff works really well. And you can buy this at a craft store. I just picked this up at a craft store. You buy it in sheets. And then I use a paper cutter, you know, one of those guillotine type paper cutters to trim it. And so that'll take care of that. If we turn the light on, we can see that the blue gel in here is still very good. So it'll light up really well when we get the new vellum and the new lights in there. So that's great. Also got some of this double-sided Scotch tape. It's very thin and it does a very good job of replacing this tape here. We're just going to have to cut it to the correct width, and that's not going to be a problem. We'll trim it down. But I think the most important part of this is going to be this dial light. There's a little grain of wheat bulb, that's what we call them, at least what I call them, that was in the dial indicator, and it is burned out. So we're going to replace it with a new LED light, and this one fits, but not perfectly. It goes in there, but it sticks up ever so slightly, and that's because this little edge here, you can see it kind of sticks up. I don't know how clear you can see it, but we can actually just file that little piece in there down just the slightest amount, and this will fit right in there. So that's what we're going to do now, and I'll get this all put together and we'll go through the process. That part will be done, and then we can get to work on the rest of the amplifier and so forth. Well, the dial light is in. That looks good. The new bulbs are in, and I have the vellum with the double stick tape on there. Punched the holes in it, so that looks good. Should line up good. And we're now ready to put this on, and it's kind of fidgety around the camera, so I'm going to just put it on. Oh, it's just going to slide in there like that, and then we'll put the little bracket on. All right, dial face is done and all put together. Looks good. And you can see this capacitor I added up here for the dropping capacitor for the lights. And we'll see how that works later on when we power back up. And I don't have any of these wired in yet, but I'll take care of that later. Right now, I've pulled these out of the way. And I'm going to get this cleaned up because all of these controls are all scratchy and dirty. So we're going to remove them and clean them properly. And then while this board's out, you might as well replace these capacitors. And even if I were not going to do a full recap on these, I like to replace these orange capacitors. These are special low noise capacitors, and they are very high quality, but one of the problems with them is they tend to develop leakage as they age. So not always, but a lot of times when you check these, the ESR will start creeping up on them, or the leakage will start creeping up, and you end up having to replace them anyway. And since they're directly in the audio path, it's not something you really want to mess with. So even if I were not doing a full recap, I would, at the least, just on a basic service, I would replace these. So here's a quick example of what I'm talking about. Here's one of those orange capacitors. It's a 4.7 microfarad at 25 volt. And if we check it, you can see it's reading 6186 nanofarads, and it's reading of ESR of 5.4 ohms. This is what these things do. And just to give you a little comparison, here is a KL series. This is a Nichicon KL series, which these are officially the only low noise rated capacitor that I could find. I'm sure there's other ones out there, but from the Nichicon line, these are the only one. These are the closest compatible to these orange capacitors, although you probably could get away with the Nichicon FG series, but they're not considered a quote-unquote low noise cap. But anyway, look at this, and you could see the ESR is much lower, right near that 4.7 microfarads that it should be, and V loss is 0.4%. So it's pretty much different. This is what that orange one should be like. So that's why I replace all these orange capacitors. Now I'm not going to go through and test them all because I don't really care, but this is what happens to them. You can tell because they have this orange color, and on the bottom they have this shiny epoxy in the bottom of them. Whenever you see those, that's a pretty telltale sign, and they're made by Nippon Chemicon. Everybody used these back in the day. I mean, you see these in the Marantz, the Pioneer, Sansui, you know, most of that era audio equipment in the audio path used these because they were very high quality, but they just didn't hold up like some of the other caps did. All right, the pots have been cleaned, all the capacitors have been replaced, the board's been cleaned off, and I think this is ready to put back together. And this is where we're going to end this part. And while I wait for some parts to come in that I ordered, this is a little bit more extensive when you restore this. Some of the parts that I need I did not have in stock, so I had to put an order in. So we're going to leave this right where it is, and when we come back we will be working on the power amplifier and power supply sections. I am probably off camera going to clean up this board. There's just a couple capacitors on it and some controls that need cleaned, but that's it. That'll be not much. And let me know down in the comments when I go to do the portion with the power amplifier and everything, if you'd like to do when I do that, if you'd like to come along when I replace the capacitors and we'll do the little chat like we do sometimes. I know a lot of you really like that, some of you don't, so let me know. And if you like it, maybe we'll do that, and if not, I'll just kind of skip through on the next video on that part. So let me know. Until then, peace, joy, happiness, and good health in your lives, and we'll be back real soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.